Is this thing working? Is this thing on? Looks like we got a winner. What's happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic whatever day you're watching this. So, couple of updates, really more like just really one update and like one ongoing saga. Basically, getting the tune put together for Stormy. So that's been kind of the thing I've been working on primarily, just trying to figure out what the truck is really going to like in the real world. There's one thing that's different when you're tuning something on a drag strip versus when you're tuning something for the street. A lot of that has to do with fuel quality. I know a lot of folks are saying, well, why don't you do this or that or whatever with the tune? And the only problem with all of that is that the truck still has to function in the real world with real fuel quality issues. And to be honest, I'm only running 89 octane in the thing, but it has to be able to run on 87. If I'm out in the middle of nowhere and I got to fill the thing up on basically regular gasoline, I can't be throwing the kitchen sink at this thing in terms of timing. But the good thing is that I got to be honest with you guys, the tune in this truck is set up, you would think, to run at least down low anyway, like the absolute worst quality gasoline you could ever imagine finding on any gas station. It's just weird. So anyway, going in and cleaning up some things that are going to help the truck launch a little bit better. And going back to some of the things that I know worked on the drag strip. The only downside to all of that is that, again, getting the truck to launch any harder, if you guys have seen any of the videos that I've been posting, most of the problem that I have is actually traction at launch. Getting the thing to actually leave without lighting the tires up. I can't really load it anything past 1,000 RPM and watt the throttle. It just basically will spin the tires. One video, and I cannot believe I haven't posted this. I did a video with the truck with the traction control on, just flat-footed the truck out of the hole, very full tank of gas. And I keep forgetting to load it. It's one of the runs that I wanted to show you guys. Like, look, this is what it would be if anybody got in the truck, full tank of gas, and just stomped on it. I think this thing still went like a 1458 or something like that. So it's pretty funny. But again, a lot of that is just me playing with some shift points and a little bit of fueling. That's really about it. I can tell you that the truck is really no different than any of the other 5.7s that I've played with. It absolutely does not like anything above about 18.5 degrees of timing with that stock cam, and with those manifolds, it just doesn't really dig it all that much. But with all that being said, there's really no knock retard to speak of, aside from what you may consider to be somewhat sketchy fuel quality. But the other funny thing that I've noticed about Stormy is that she does not like getting tuned. Not that it doesn't take well to the tune. That's not what I'm trying to say. What it is it's it's kind of funny because you put the tune in the truck and it takes it a few wide open throttle hits to kind of shake the, sleep out of its eyes, I guess. But anyway, it's just kind of one of the funny things. It's extremely consistent that on the first dig hit that I'll have knock retard, and then on the very next one, very hot lap, like literally make the pass, come to a complete stop, and then make that hit again while everything is piping hot. Or with just enough time for me to stop and, peruse through data or something like that. It will absolutely not have anywhere near the knock retard that it did before. And then the next run, it won't have any. So just kind of funny, working through some quirks with this truck. Another thing is that, it's kind of interesting. Some of the weird things that just don't work in terms of tuning on this truck. I don't know if it's a 2022 thing, 19s and 20s. 21s could be different, but the 22, the goofy little things like idle RPM, it just doesn't care. You can set it to practically whatever you want. The truck just idles at whatever it wants to idle at. Fueling works well, timing works well. And of course, I've got all my stuff that I play with shift points, and all of that works fine. So there's that, and then ran into some issues with data logging, but I've got that squared away. Just a weird thing where a new computer didn't like at all HP tuners for a hot second, and then loaded HP tuners again and reloaded up a config file, and now everything seems to work fine. Go figure. I don't know. Anyway, technology, right? But yeah, it's just kind of weird. There's just like goofy little things that don't. Oh, the other one was driver command torque. That was the other thing. Typically, if you're playing with a driver demand torque table, when you command a certain amount of pedal, it will basically open the throttle so much that computer understands that command to mean, okay, at this throttle position opening, the driver is expecting, I don't know, 50% power. Well, that it shouldn't matter where you set that driver command setting. In fact, it could be that just touching the pedal that much is wide open throttle and it command, 100% power. Weird thing about Stormy is that it doesn't seem to work. It works great with the throttle, but it doesn't seem to translate into line pressures. Not that I was needing to data log that part of it. The truck would just shudder like it had very slightly, but it shuddered like it had a converter shudder. So after a couple of times of doing that, basically I drove it around for about 10 minutes trying to figure out what it was, went back and took all that back out, reset a lot of the transmission stuff back to stock, and the truck's as happy as can be, which is kind of the point to this, is that the truck really does well at stock values. But there are some things that I've noticed while I've been tuning it. One of the things I've actually pulled timing out of it. There's a couple of, at wide open throttle on the far right-hand side of the table, there's a couple of rows that are commanding a whole lot of timing, like timing that you would just not ever expect to see out of a 5.7. And, 23 and a half degrees of timing, which for that truck is just too much. Even if you think of it as having a 10 base, like it's got 10 degrees built into the tune already, these Hemis, and just like an LS, they don't like much more than about 27, 28 degrees of timing typically. So not with a long runner intake, even one with the short runner actuator like this thing does. So I went in, I yanked a bunch of timing out again, threw fuel at it, played around with some other settings, and was able to pick up 0.5 in the quarter mile of this thing so far. So, a little bit less than that, 0.4, really. And so anyway, let me check in with you guys real quick, and I'll keep going over some stuff. If you have any questions about Stormy, let me know. And I'm going to get into the 2023 Rams as well. So Rift is in. What's up, brother? Carzilla's in. Thumbs up. Chuck, what's up, brother? Chuck Rice is in. Big time friend of the show. SRT Hellcat, hit me. Howdy B. Rift is in saying, do you know how people change that you connect from saying 700 plus horsepower to something else? I heard it had something to do with the tune. Talking about the Uconnect changing. Man, I have heard of folks doing it. I have asked how to. Now you can change that. You can, but you can't. There's some things, depending on how modified the car is, and there's some hacky things you've got to do in the tune with some of the higher horsepower stuff. But typically you'll find that like messing around with like the stoichiometric values and things like that, you can get some changes. You're talking about the performance pages in there. I've tried to figure out how to get in there and do other things in the Uconnect besides that. And there's no way to do it. It's all run through the body control module, which is incredibly frustrating, to say the least. Chuck, thank you very much, brother. Saying I was comparing some exhaust systems for my Challenger Scat and found that the 3-inch stock Mopar sounds fine as it is. Also, would cattle mats work for underneath my tires when it's in storage time? Cattle mats. Those are the, like what you would find in like restaurants, right? The spongy things. As long as you don't break the cattle mats, I don't think that there would be a problem. One thing I would check on though is make sure, I don't see how there could be a problem with them unless there would be some kind of a problem with the rubber itself in the cattle mat, because I am aware of some rubber not playing well with tire rubber. Like, you don't want to just roll up on it and park. You want to make sure that the mat itself is good to work with the tire that is going to be sitting on it, obviously, but with the weight as well. Again, I can't imagine it hurting it, but just check with the manufacturer. Let them know what you're going to do with it, because again, it's going to be a chemical compatibility between the two different rubber types. I can tell you that, like, for example, in the flooring world, there's some vinyl that doesn't work well with true rubber mats. I know that in the car world, you have to have a special kind of mat just to put underneath the tires if you're going to put a mat under the tires. So just check with that and see if that is going to work. But thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate that. Saying the thick rubber mats keep the tires off the frozen ground. Yeah, I mean, I would, again, checking with the manufacturer to make sure that the rubber won't react with tire rubber. I would think that that'd be a pretty good idea. As long as they're about, an inch thick or so, you should be in good shape. Charles said, we spoke about the drive shaft previously. We finished the install today with the 4-inch aluminum DSS, and there is some pretty significant vibration. The issue starts about 110 to 115. Interesting. Is that the twin CV joint drive shaft? Or, Chuck's saying, thank you for subscribing to my channel, of course. Is that the twin CV, or is that one CV on one end and a U joint on the other, Terrell? Because I can tell you, I was out of the drive shaft game at one point, leading right up until DSS had introduced their twin CV, and had heard nothing but good things about it. So, which one did you get? That's going to be an interesting thing. You would be the first person that I have heard of that had an issue with the actual twin CV drive shaft. Oh, Chuck saying, and everyone else, good deal. Riff saying, Terrell Cooper. Terrell saying, no, it's a direct fit on both ends. Well, it's going to be a direct fit on both ends, but is it a CV on both ends, or is it a U joint, like an actual Spicer U joint on one end and the CV on the other end? In other words, like the stock drive shaft, does it have the two CVs on both ends, or does it not have a CV on one of the ends? It's a CV on both ends. Man, I tell you what, you are the first person, just like the stock, you're the first person I've heard of that has had an issue with it. I think Rift, you might be running one of those. And like I say, I have not heard anybody complaining about that drive shaft, but I'll also say that that's most of the reason why there's a red eye drive shaft underneath my car. In fact, that bums me out, because that was actually one of the things that I wanted to do to Revlon, was to potentially put one of the new twin CV drive shafts on the car. So to hear that kind of bums me out. I have literally heard nothing but good things from everybody that's running. And those guys are running 130, 140 miles an hour with those things. Oh, Rift is saying, I heard to change the horsepower on the readout, you have to have a 2018 or newer, which could be very much the case. Toxic saying the tuner can change the horsepower on the Uconnect and the tuning. I tell you something, the way that everything is calculated, it's just it's actual torque, what it is calculating to be actual torque. And that's the number that it's using to calculate horsepower. But a lot of that calculation is based around, it's not from an acceleration rate. It's from the amount of air that the car is bringing in, the air fuel ratio, because if you notice, if you lean it out, you can actually manipulate the number up, even though the car may be making more power. It's kind of funny how it works like that. Oh, Ripped is asking, he was at if that drive shaft is dampened, because I heard that sometimes the stuff inside can be pushed to one side. I believe they fill that thing full of expanding foam, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. There's not like an elastomeric component to it. Not that I'm aware of, unless they change something. Oh, so other things that I'm just talking about the drive shafts. I can tell you that from my car, I never had a drive shaft. I kind of wish I would have put the twin CD on my car now, but I never had an aftermarket drive shaft on my car that worked well. And I got to the point where, Behemoth actually gave me a red eye drive shaft, gifted the channel a red eye drive shaft. And I mean, I will never put another drive shaft under that car other than that drive shaft. It is the absolute heaviest of the bunch and couldn't care less. I will always run that drive shaft. Speaking of aftermarket stuff. So what's next for Stormy? Well, Stormy, you guys know I'm tuning Stormy, but got to go with 180 thermostat. Yes, I'm going with the Duralast 180 degree. This is part number 41680. You guys are familiar with this one. This would be the same that I put in Shalandra years and years ago that worked great. But a couple of things that I do to get these things ready before I put them on the car or truck or whatever. And really all of these things are more or less the same. Gates, Mishimoto, Motorad, all of that. I think Duralast is, probably made by Gates, even though it's Hensho in Israel. If any of those other brands are made in Israel, then, who knows where these things are made, because now it's saying Mexico. Anyway, one of the things I do, just like you guys, drill the holes. Usually drill a couple of holes on either side. You get the one that comes with it, a little clinker thing, I don't even know why it's there, like a check valve or whatever. I'll typically pop that out. I typically take that out and I'll drill usually one right next to it, and then these two down here. What that's for is just to help the thing burp, keep air out of the thing. It's not going to help water flow. If the thing shuts, believe me when I tell you, it's not going to flow enough through those little holes to keep it cool. But what it will do is it'll keep air from holding back behind that thermostat. It makes it easier to burp. Another thing I wanted to show, and this is impossible to show on this camera. Let's say you're working on one of these things and you've got thermostats, you're just surrounded by thermostats. A lot of the times, this is true of the stock one, all of them. If you look in that brass, you can see where it says, oh, actually I had it upside down. Or was it upside down? Is that right side up? Anyway, see where it says 180. There you go. That'll let you know what the temperature is. So the stock one, which I just had sitting here and it ran off, I have no idea where it split to. Anyway, the stock one, exact same thing. You'll just see it says 203 on the bottom of it. So that's how you will identify. Here we go. That's how you would identify them if they're just kind of running around. If you've got one sitting there like, man, what the hell thermostat is that? I can't remember. Just look down in there. It's a neat little hack. It's a trick you'll never forget now that you've seen it. And it'll definitely help you, when you're getting those things and putting them in the car or truck. I just know I've had them sitting around. I'm like, damn it, what the hell? Which one was this one? And is it really the right one? That's the other thing. I always check them. And just like anything, when you work at a shop, you see everything, right? So probably installed, I don't know, 20 of these things. And weirdly enough, never had one of these fail personally, but have had ones from like the aftermarket. I think Mishimoto had a bad run of these things, although I am just, oh yeah. Hey, check it out. This one is a Motorrad. I was right. Here you go. I knew it was on there somewhere. Can y'all see that? There you go. It's a Motorrad. So Duralast is made by Motorrad. Grand total like $20 at your local AutoZone. So next time anybody asks, you can go, Motorrad, Duralast. It's all the same thing. So don't go paying $50 or $60 for the same thermostat. You can literally get right down the street. Oh, again, that part number, just so you guys have it, 41680. And that's your Duralast built by Motorrad thermostat. Riff, thank you very much. Saying thanks for all the info, Mr. Mopar. B, thank you very much. Rift is talking about the drive shaft, saying they used to have the option to get dampened. I thought they were all dampened. I didn't know that there was an option one way or another. Either way, it's a great drive shaft as long as it's not vibrating. True that. And Terrell's asking Coop if he's Terrell's asking Rift if he's had any issues at that speed. Everybody that I've talked to, I mean, I know guys that do half mile events with those things and didn't have an issue with them. Interesting. Saying, yeah, Rift is saying they do come dampened. I was never given an option. It was just, here's your drive shaft. And then Rift is bringing up a good point, saying he had an issue with the first one, sent it back, and he got one that didn't have a problem. You know what's weird is that I have heard, not with this drive shaft, but when guys were running the CV joint on one end and the Spicer U joint on the other, I had heard a guy saying this one vibrated, but I had him rebalance it or whatever. It came back and it was great. So let me tell you my experience with drive shafts. Oh crap. What was the name of that company? Ralph is the guy that owns it, and I can't remember the damn name. Anyway, I've tried to put it out of my memory. I was just running. Anyway, I've gone through a whole lot of issues with drive shafts, and I did a lot of drive shaft testing, and it was one of those things where I really wanted to only do this one time and give somebody a whole lot of praise and then go from there. And it didn't quite work that way at all. So, yeah, I had some nightmare situations, whether it was, Wiles is the name of the place, whether it was Wiles that I had nothing but problems with. In fact, I had one of Wiles showed up, and the U joint was so stiff you couldn't, the U joint, it just kind of flops around, and you just take the thing and this thing was so stiff. If you propped it up against the wall, it wouldn't move. Like you could pop it while it was up against the wall and it wouldn't, it was bad. It just, anyway. And then DSS, I had some issues there too. So just not with that drive shaft though. Not with the one with the CV joints on both ends. Doom's checking in. Got a good question. Say, hey, B, what is your opinion of the fact that it's going on 8 straight years of the same old 392? Just with the body package being sold in regards to the 2023. And the body package being sold in regards to the 2023 Super B. I like the idea. I'll start with the back and move forward. I like the Super B. I like the Super B because, number one, it's a Charger, and they're doing something cool with a Charger. You're getting the Demon wheels. It's a wide body, so there's that. Y'all know I love that car in wide body. Line lock, whatever, everything else. Okay, great. But I'm glad they did that for the Charger. Now, what about that 392? The problem with the 392 is that it's really, really good. And the problem with the 392 being really, really good is that to make it really any better, you've got to make it a lot better to even notice that it's gotten better. Now, one of the easy ways to do that is a revised camshaft and a revised intake manifold. The choke point on that engine is the intake manifold. Now, some will argue that, and the data may validate some of their arguments. However, I will say this. As the guy that was porting manifolds over and over and over and keep going over and over again. I've done so many of those things. I lost count how many I've done. One of the things that I noticed in the data is no matter how much I cleaned one of those things up, it was never really the prettiest data, even with a much larger throttle body and all of that. It took a camshaft upgrade to reduce the activity of the intake runners to chill that intake out a little bit so where it would run good. A slightly revised camshaft and a different intake manifold would be all you would need to bump that engine up from 485 to about 515 horsepower. That's really all you would need realistically, 485 to 515. The problem with that is that bump in power would necessitate a recertification through the EPA. That's not a big deal, provided that the engine that you're trying to get passed through EPA will pass. And the problem is that Dodge was having problems with the 392 getting it to pass. The Hellcat would not pass if it were brought to market today. It's grandfathered in, basically. With some software updates that basically turn that car into a one wide open throttle hit wonder, and then it goes immediately into cat overtemp. That's something that has really been in play kind of from the beginning in a way. It's more catalytic converter protection, but I've seen some data logs where the cars go crazy fat. Hellcats will go as rich as 9.5 to 1 on air fuel ratio. It's craziness. With NA stuff like Stormy and Buffy going basically into the, it could go as rich as 10.5 to 1. So maybe that's the reason why they're throwing so much timing where they did, which was weird because it was one area, which is like the majority of the air you're running in, had a ton of timing. And then one row down, it yanked like 7 degrees of timing. Really strange. Anyway, back to your point. To get really an honest to goodness amount more power out of the car would mean that they would have to put a combination together that would guarantee not pass EPA. So what do? Well, the next step would be a bump in displacement. You go to 411 cubic inches. 426 is the romantic size that you would go to, maybe even a 440. But again, you're back to square one, and you might be stuck in a situation where you've got an engine that not only is making marginally more power and mainly only making more torque, which is something the 392 really doesn't need to make any more of. Let's say you're making 530 horsepower and 530 foot-pounds of torque. Will it pass? And that's the biggest issue. I think that's the whole reason why you never saw a 426 is mainly because they couldn't get one to pass emissions. And that stinks. But rules are the rules, and these are the rules you play by. And I get it. I would have loved to have seen something different, though. And I guess for me, it's where there's a will, there's a way, guys. That's how I see this. If Ford can make a 7.3 liter truck engine pass emissions in a truck, there's ways to get a 7 liter or a 7.21 liter and with the 440 displacement. There's ways to get that to pass. There's ways to do it. Is it expensive? Maybe. Maybe it takes 4 catalytic converters. It's not like cars haven't seen 4 cats before. Hell, the Mustangs at one point had 6. So maybe that would have been a better option. I really don't know. It's one of those things where, and you can argue cost all you want, but I can tell you something. If I'm going to be paying an extra $5,000 or $7,000 for a 426 to be in my car, you think I'm tripping over $1,500 or $1,800 for an extra set of catalytic converters? No, I'm not. So again, where there's a will, there's a way. And I feel like Dodge kind of let us all down with that. So hopefully that answers your question, and it stinks, but that's where we're at. Chuck, thank you very much. Saying the factory stabilizer bars are fixed. The Eibach replacements are adjustable. Very good. With the drive modes in my Scat already adjusting the dampeners, would it be necessary to upgrade? No, not at all. I wouldn't mess with anything with the suspension with that car. I absolutely love the stock suspension in those cars, man. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't mess with it at all. I'd leave her right just as she is. And that's another thing, kind of goes back to my point. I'd done a video years ago about this. Why is the 392 the most important engine that Dodge has ever released? Why is the 392 better than the 426? All of that. I had addressed that in a video years and years ago, and I feel like I might want to retouch on that. In fact, there's a lot of videos from a long time ago that I should probably redo because when I made them, they're practically unwatchable. But I can tell you this, it's the LX platform is really, really good. It's based off of a car that was basically designed to run at 150 miles an hour for a full tank of gas, with the W211 Mercedes being the basis for the LX platform. And in fact, I've kind of got a very soft spot in my heart for Chargers because I used to own a W211 E63 AMG and loved that car. Extremely fast. And that is, in essence, what the Charger is. In fact, it's really funny because I sit in a Charger and it's if I close my eyes, everything is in the exact same place as my Mercedes was. Oh, Doom saying Ford and Chevy seem to care more about their grassroots racer more than Dodge as they continue to resell the same exact 392. They made one upgrade in 2015. Ford and Chevy's had 3 upgrades. Here's the funny thing, though. They have had 3 upgrades, but isn't it funny how Chevy never did match the power of the 392? And this is where you got to remember that Dodge, it's hard to, how do you do better than a Grand Slam? You know what I mean? Like if you hit a Grand Slam, you can't do any better than that. And that's kind of what Dodge did with the 392. Ford, yeah, they had revised some things with the Coyote, but it's all Boss 302 parts, basically. It's more or less parts bin stuff. But nonetheless, you're right. I mean, they were making upgrades and were making strides with that engine. And it was a shame that Dodge didn't at least introduce a different intake manifold or whatever. I can tell you that to make any more power, the engine's got to be able to rev, which is going to absolutely necessitate a different intake manifold. Chevy, on the other hand, I mean, you had the LS1, the LS2, the LS3, which arguably is best engine ever designed. The LS7 was optioned in a Camaro at one point, and then the supercharged variants. But that's like trying to compare Hellcat to those things. Hellcat still outpowers them basically. But the idea is weird thing about Chevrolet, and this is something that absolutely used to irk me. Why didn't Chevy ever put more camshaft in the LS3? It always bugged the hell out of me. Because, I would take a 6.2 liter, 6.4 liter. They're basically the same displacement. There's not that much separating them. And you take a 236, 242 cam, put that into a LS3. stock intake, long tube headers, the rest of it. And it makes the same power as a 6.4 with the same cam, just a little bit less torque. And you would expect that just based on the engine size. And in some cases, it may make a little bit more horsepower because the LS3 intake's just that good. It used to just drive me nuts, though, that I would, you'd look at the Chevy and go, my God, if you would just put just a little bit more camshaft into this thing, instead of being 455, it'd be 485 or 495. But then if you tried to put an aftermarket camshaft, you just wouldn't see the gains. And so to me, the LSX offerings were always way undercammed. The problem with undercamming an engine with heads that are as good as those are, the problem with undercamming them is that they always felt bland. Like they always felt lazy to me. And you put a cam in them and it's wah out. And it's just really, really aggressive. And I was just used to drive me nuts about that. And then that same annoyance came again when I was test driving trucks. Not, trying to bring this back a little bit to Stormy a little bit or Rams, but it drove me nuts that the flipping Chevy was as slow as it was. And it just, that really bummed me out because I actually really liked that truck a lot. But I wasn't going to buy it because it was a turd. It was terrible. Marco's in. What's up, brother? Got the gloves. I like it. Terrell saying, thank you for the advice, guys. I'll be sending it back. Yeah, send that thing back, man. Don't ever, and that's one thing. I don't know if I'm just got a sensitive ass or something, but NVH stuff will drive me absolutely crazy. I've got friends of mine that would never bug, and it will make me lose my mind. Riff saying, I think my car is pulling a lot of power when I race in Sacktown with 100+ degree weather. How much do you think an interchiller would help time-wise? Ooh, well, it depends. It will at least help you to be somewhat more consistent. At least that's what we've seen, or some of the data that I have would suggest. But yeah, you could definitely be in a situation where you've got timing being pulled because you're in a hot spark table. It just depends on what your tune looks like. If they're yanking a bunch of timing because of heat, which is a good idea, then the interchiller will definitely help. Again, it may not help a ton, but at least it'll help you to be more consistent. Oh, Rip's saying, or could I do a run and let it cool down? That's what we do. I mean, shoot, that we've got the Z Automotive tasers, and when it's nasty, you just make a pass, come back, run the taser for 10 minutes, let it cool off. On the cool down mode, just put it on low. You don't have to be on high. Just put it on low, let it cool off, and you're good to go. I wouldn't mess with an interchiller, dude. Listen, I'm not on board with them. I think they're a bit more of a gimmick than anything else. I know that they do help with consistency. The problem is when you get into cooler weather, that thing is not going to help you at all in cold weather. And that's just dead weight when you've got really good air. So take that for what it's worth, man. Get you a taser and do the chill thing. I think you'll be happy. Oh, Rip's saying I was 900 horse cat. Yep. So I'm saying, sup, B? Sup, son? Alberto's saying, hey, B, have you been able to tow anything yet with the Ram? If so, how did it do? I haven't with this one, but I can tell you that I have with other Rams carried a lot of load. I've carried about 1,300 pounds in the back, and it did fine with that, although I don't really recommend that too much. I know that Mean Cat has towed with his. He's got one somewhat similar to mine. And in fact, he towed Mean Cat to the track with his truck and did fine. 321 gear, 4,500 pound car with a 1,500 pound trailer, well within the range of that truck. Happy as can be. So, but I wouldn't recommend much more than that with the Dodge. I will say this: the Dodge does a great job, as far as I can tell, pulling things and managing weight that is up to about maybe 7,000 pounds total. I think anything more than that, and you start to get into some weird situations with the fact that it's a coil spring with a panhard bar, and you can get some body shift on that axle a little bit, especially if you get something, kind of undulating road. So if you're towing something super heavy, like if you got a big travel trailer you're planning on towing, get a 3/4 ton. Yeah, I know what these trucks are capable of towing, but it's still a 1/2 ton truck at the end of the day. I would say 7,000 pounds would be my functioning limit. And if you really got to drag something, it will do it. But really, just watch your tongue weight. That's the main thing. Keep that tongue weight around 300 pounds or so. 300 to 400. Chuck saying, it doesn't seem like I need to do anything to my 21 Scat B, and I love everything about it. So the funny thing is, a friend of mine and I ran into each other on Friday, and he'd recently picked up a Scat, black Scatty, real pretty car. And, he was asking me, hey, will you put a tune on it? Will you, what would you do and all this other stuff? And I shut it down. I said, look, dude, I can't, anything that I do to that car is going to be only but a margin of a difference. It's like a marginal improvement. There's some things on a drag pack in terms of shift points that you may be able to perfect. But we're talking splitting hairs here. And that's one of the key takeaways that I had with the latest operating system. It's just really, really that good. We had the shaker at the track rental a couple of years ago. That car was running 1150s with just a drag pack and a passenger seat removed. And we had two 1320s, one of which, again, rear seat delete cars, had one of the passenger seats removed. Basically was mimicking an as delivered, because these cars were not on drag packs. It was mimicking an as delivered single seat 1320. And those cars ran 1140s. So you had 1150s and 1140s. That's tough to beat, man. That's really hard to beat. And going back to that question about the 392, it's an 11-second car, and a deep 11-second car the way that it sits, just with a little bit of prep. So they've come a long way, man. They've come a long way, and they've come a long enough way to where, in my eyes, it's not that I can't get more out of the car. I can. But damn, is it even worth a shot? There's some torque management things I can play with. I never ever eliminate torque management. You always want some. But there's some settings in there. There's a lot of goofy little settings that I can go in there and play with. And if you absolutely had to cover an extra tenth or two, I could probably drag that out of the car pretty easily. But it's so good now from the factory. It just isn't worth messing with. Phoenix 98 saying it would have been real nice to see Ram 1500 with a 392. Bet. So let's talk about Rams for a minute. So 2023 Ram. Oh, and if y'all have any other questions about Stormy or the tune stuff or anything I've done to the truck so far, obviously let me know. Again, she's getting a new thermostat. I keep doing that upside down. Be a 180, just showing you guys the inside in case you ever want to know what a thermostat's rated at. It's in that cavity right there. Oh, and again, to remind you guys, the Duralast 41680 part number, these are made by your friends at Motorrad. So it's an actual Motorrad thermostat. So let's talk about that thing for a minute. So 2023 order banks have opened up. And so far as we can tell, there's nothing different than 2022. And by that logic, my truck is a 2023, at least by what the commonly held parlance of dating a truck or car is. In other words, if that vehicle has a birthday in July and it's 2022, then that vehicle is typically, it's raining right now. So here in Velocito, I don't think he's going to go out and do anything. But if he does, there's tow trucks. But anyway, getting back to it. What was I talking about? I was just thrown off. Anyway, I guess, damn, I totally lost my, with the powertrain thing in 2023. So by the commonly accepted way of dating a car, my truck would be a 2023. But getting back to it, the order banks opened up. Even though you cannot configure a 2023 online right now, and it is September, even though you can't configure 2023, the order banks have opened up. And if you go to any of your dealers and you want to build a 2023, there is absolutely zero difference right now. As of September 2022, there's zero difference between a 2022 and a 2023 Ram. Nothing's changed. So since nothing has changed, what happened to that Hurricane engine that was going to potentially be available to us either in the Grand Cherokee or in the truck? Wasn't that supposed to have already been a thing? I could have sworn that 2023, we were going to get this new digital dash that was going to mimic what the Grand Cherokee has. That didn't come out. Again, the Hurricane engine thing never happened. And if it does come up, maybe it's a 2024, which is at least a full year away from us from being able to be offered. Will there be a mid-year release? Well, I don't know, but I can tell you this. I don't know if it's going to even be worth waiting on. Like if I wanted to get a truck and I hadn't have bought Stormy, or rather Stormy would not have found me. Anyway, if I wouldn't have found Stormy, would I still be waiting on a truck? Not now, not after hearing that there's not going to be anything else going on for at least 6 months to a year in terms of rebody, reshaping, repowering, or even gazmos or gadgets in the interior of the truck. So where does that leave us? Well, I mean, not in a bad place. I have to admit that this DT Ram is, again, the best, worst kept secret out there. The more I drive the truck, the more I like it. The Corsa S-Type, great sounding exhaust. The tune seems to be working great. I love the rear leveling thing, the springs, and soon to be a thermostat and a slight retune to go along with the cooler temperatures that thing is going to bring. Got to tell you, I'm pretty happy with the way the truck sits. So, and there's not any other powertrain options that they're going to change. You can't get a 355 gear, which would be kind of neat. Not that I don't think I would ever notice it, or maybe I wouldn't even miss it. Having the 321 does great on the highway. And very rarely now, especially that I played with the truck a little bit by tickling the ivories, it doesn't really suffer anywhere, so to speak. So the drivability is there. In fact, it feels a lot like driving a 392 geared truck now. So there's that. But yeah, nothing. And there were so many people saying, well, the 2023 model year is going to get all of this stuff. And that didn't happen. And a lot of that has to do with supply chain issues. And I get that 100%. But you got to understand that too many people have been talking for too long about having my sources. My sources have told me we're going to have the Hurricane engine 2023. Funny how that didn't happen. So many people have sources, by the way. My sources are telling me, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's just always kind of funny because it never fails that those sources end up being their imagination. It's like my imaginary friend tells me that they're going to have the Hurricane with a hybrid platform here in the next 15 days. 2023, order banks are open. Where's my hybrid? Speaking of hybrids, when is SEMA? I know I'm such a dunce when it comes to paying attention to that stuff. What is that? Next month? Month after next? Do you think we're going to actually see any kind of hybrid technology with a V8 or at least with the Hurricane inline six, whether it's for a truck, a SUV, a car, or anything? What do you guys think? What are your imaginary friends telling you? I'm telling you, my imaginary friend says don't hold your breath, but it'd be kind of cool to see something. I don't know. I guess to me, it just, it's starting to get, I think a lot of people are just getting so yawn when it comes to Dodge right now. It's a whole lot of promises, but they just don't know where they're going. It's trying to tell you what you want to hear instead of telling you what you need to hear. A lot of that's going on. At least that's what it feels like for me. Oh, Sovereign saying, oh, wait, something just happened here. This blew all the way past everybody. What the hell? Bear with me here just a second. Man, I hit something on here and it went all the way to the bottom. Here we go. Okay. Maybe Dad saying Dodge would make so much bank if they did a modern 426 or 440. If they could get it to pass. If they could get it to pass. Chuck's agreeing with it, though. He's saying, I'm sure the hairdryer noise EV would be better sounding than a 440. I don't think anybody's thinking that. Marco's liking the 5.7. I love the 5.7. It runs great. Siren saying, bring the Elephant. The funny thing with the Elephant is that it absolutely will not pass. And that's one of the biggest issues that they've had with that thing. If there was ever a plan to make that engine work, it got squashed when it wouldn't pass and get an EO. Chuck saying, I have to go with my 392, insane as it is, bone stock, for sure. Chuck saying, thanks, Amy Dad. And Sovereign saying 392 is basically 426 today. The thing is it's so much better than the 426. It's actually streetable. I mean, if you've ever driven a 426 car, a real honest to goodness stock displacement 426 car, don't do it. Yeah, you're going to walk away from the experience with a different opinion of it. I can promise you that. Mark is saying he sparred with some heavyweights, and now I know why they are heavyweights. Going back to Muay Thai, I use my Muay Thai. I like using my kicks. You know what's funny is, so light heavyweights and heavyweights. What's weird is that I would almost rather, depending on the heavyweight, I would rather be in the ring with a heavyweight usually, because I can typically drag a heavyweight into deep water. Light heavyweights are a different story because a lot of those guys are 6'2" and 6'4", coming in at 205, and they're rangy, and a lot of those guys are lanky, and they have got big hands and long shins and big feet, and they have a nasty way of putting them in places that hurt. Heavyweights, a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of the heavyweights, it's one of those things where, okay, so let me tell you guys the difference between sparring with like a middleweight and a light heavyweight. I won't even talk about the heavyweights, depending on frame type and everything else. When I was real involved in stuff like that, I would come in at about 185 at the heaviest. But sparring with a true cut light heavyweight who's going to walk into the ring at about 220 and weigh in at 205. The difference is that the middleweight can knock you out with a straight right. A light heavyweight can blank you with a lead jab. And a heavyweight can knock you clean out with that same jab. That's the difference. So it's a whole different ballgame when you start messing with these guys that are really good and dedicate their entire life to it. But I get exactly what you mean. Keep them at bay. Remember, your legs have more reach than your arms do. Oh, Doom saying, the 392 dead last versus the SS and the GT. Not on the drag strip. In fact, mod for mod, tire for tire, I never had a problem with the SS or the 5-liter on the drag strip. From a roll, it's a different story, but each car is going to have their strengths and weaknesses. I can tell you that, I've seen plenty of NA Camaros. You're talking about modability, I guess, at that point. But stock, 392 has never been all that great from a roll. It's about as aerodynamic as a brick. That doesn't help it at all. Plus, it's heavy. But those same attributes, at least the weight, helped me a lot just by getting out on Camaros and Mustangs at the drag strip, tire for tire, and modification for modification. We're not talking about, somebody that's race prepped, full on E85, dropped a ton of weight and all of that. That's a 10-second car usually. But there's plenty of 10-second 392s and, fairly deep 10-second, 1080s are pretty common down here with the 392s that have been lightened up and, tuned and on a drag pack. But that pales in comparison to the Camaro, which, we were seeing 1050s, 1030s fairly regularly out of the Camaros that have been fairly well prepped. Mustangs in the 1050, 1070 range. So, I mean, it's for the guys that are prepping their cars and running them a lot, those are actually a lot of fun to watch. So, there's that. But from what I've seen, just in general, it's all just depending on what you like and which direction you choose to go. Chuck's saying I like the 426 Challenger from 1970. They are rare. The better car, I'm telling you, is the 440. And the funny thing is, so you compare like roll racing, for example, which, if you're into that crowd, then, Mustang's the only way to go. But twin turbo Mustang is actually top of the food chain right now in that respect, but they blow up a lot too. So you got to take the good with the bad. And they frag trannies a lot too. So the funny thing is that at one point I was real close to buying a well sorted, really pretty white Mustang. And had I known that it was for sale about a week before it came up, I'd have probably bought it. But anyway, I love that, the Mustangs are great. Doom saying I can't even get charted on the aftermarket. As I have owned a 14 392, could not squeeze any power out of it, and went ahead and traded it for a 14 GT. Oh yeah, okay, great. So you can get a lot more power out of a Mustang. Yeah, you can. And that's part of the neat thing about Mustangs is that you can drag a lot more power out of them. Now the 14, the bummer is that you had a 14 392 and you had a NAG 1. It's a fun car, but it's not the best out of the group in terms of being fast. But it's still a great car. But yeah, you can pull quite a bit of power out of the Mustang. We used to do it all the time with them. Oh, talking about, well, I mean, sounds like you had a better experience with the Mustang, which, if that's what you're going for, then go for it. Oh, Hemi Dad saying any 426 car in 6871 is super rare. You know what's funny? So the Hemi was out for, this is a stat that I brought up in that video. So the Gen 2 Hemi was out from 1964 to 1971. If memory serves me correctly. Anyway, 64 or 60, for sure 67, so 64. And in that amount of time, they made 15,300 and something, 15,500 street Hemi cars. Whether or not it was a super stock class car or anything like that, all the cars that were then were about 15,000. The 392, I think in 2015 alone, was like 12,000. Kind of funny. Chuck saying, Challengers rule drag strip. Doom saying, I've seen Cat Delete E85 10-speed GTs consistently beat stock Hellcats. There's tons of videos happening about it online. Yeah, it's a good combination. I used to go trolling after Hellcats with my 392, mainly because they couldn't drive. But no, listen, there's some pretty seriously modified Coyotes that are out there running 9s. So I mean, if beating a stock Hellcat is, what's funny is the Hellcat is the yardstick, isn't it? I mean, it always has been the yardstick. Will it beat a Hellcat? Is it faster than a Hellcat? So I used to go sniping after Hellcats with my SRT. And this is back in 2016, 2017, 2018. And the problem with the Hellcats is it wouldn't hook up. And so I would put so much distance on them that by the time they tried to or could reel me in, I was already too far ahead of them. Even when they were on drag radials, it was just more of a driver's thing. I just, it's easier to launch my car. But modified, anything modified should be fast. In fact, I'll go so far as to say this. If you put any amount of time, effort, or energy into any of these modern cars, and you're not basically somewhere in the 10s, then you haven't really done enough. If that's your end goal, if your goal is to be that fast, then you need to be in the 10s. And to say that you can throw E85 and this and that and that and this on a Mustang and run 10s, and people have been doing that for a long time, dude. I mean, there's nothing new about that. The problem is that when you start turning the wick up on Mustangs, the transmissions blow up. When you start trying to throw nitrous or boost at 392s, typically the tune ain't exactly right, and you end up popping a ringland. The Camaro is probably the most mod-friendly-ish. You see 9-second varieties of that car going down the track all the time. But the problem with the Camaro is that it's a Camaro, and the problem with a Mustang is that, well, it's a Mustang. And the issues that you have with the Mustang are the fact that it's not bomb-proof. It's not invincible, at least in terms of reliability. And the problems that we used to see with the Mustangs at the drag strip was that they would break a lot. So it's always good to hear about the good news, but let's also talk about the reality behind them. A lot of folks love talking about the 392 and how they apparently are made of glass, but it's actually the transmission that will fail with the understanding of how to tune one of those things on boost. It's the transmission that'll fail. I think the biggest thing that Dodge failed 392 owners, they didn't put the HP 90 in that car. So, but again, that's the difference. I mean, when you're dealing with a situation where you're talking to somebody that works at a shop, they're all junk, right? When you're dealing about somebody that's into one particular brand, like me and Dodge, it's Dodge, Mopar, or no car. So, I have had the experience and the benefit of having the experience of not only working on, wrenching on, dynoing, and either helping to tune or drive for guys, all brands down the drag strip. And I can tell you that the ones that are the most durable are the ones that have the highest resale value. Those would be the Hellcats, and to some extent, the scat packs. The Camaro, for whatever reason, well, I've gone over reasons for this, but the Camaro, man, there's a reason why it's going away, and it ain't because of EVs. I mean, that thing was on its way out a long time ago. And listen, if nothing else, the market will tell you where people want to be. They like big, comfy hot rods, and that's what the Challenger and the Charger are. And again, that's not me saying that. That's the market in general. So, let's see. Oh, Riff saying he's got Demon Springs for his cat. I hope they end up being worth it. It will help it put the power down. I would suggest, if you haven't done it already, try to get a zero camber rear alignment for your car. Any independent rear car should, if you're at the drag strip a lot, go zero or just half a degree towed in, if that. I probably wouldn't even do that, and then go 0 degree straight up and down those tires. Someone saying Stormy sounds so good. Love the way Stormy sounds. Ripped is hanging out with Doom. Oh, talking about the Mustangs. Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon to see a highly modified or even slightly or marginally modified Mustang or Camaro get out there and put work in on a Hellcat. It's not that hard to do. You got to remember, a Hellcat, depending on where you live, is a 1080 car, a 11.0 car. In fact, I've seen more Hellcats, depending on the driver, run 11.0s. And the funny thing is, a lot of Hellcat drivers aren't taking their cars to the drag strip, at least not like somebody would be taking their car if they've spent the time, money, and effort into putting into a car for drag strip duty. They're going to be at the drag strip a lot, cutting lights, things like that. So, I have beaten faster cars than me on a lot of occasions. In fact, in many cases, it's rare that my car is faster than the one that I line up next to. Down here in Houston, got a whole lot of really fast cars. So, but yeah, I mean, you'll see they mile an hour really well. They're very lightweight by comparison, and they slip through the wind a whole lot better too. So, it's funny though, talking about Mustangs, that, talking about where I wish the 392 was better. You know what I wish was better? The GT 500. It's funny. When I beat that dude in his GT 500, obviously I'm stock boost on a drag pack. He was also on drag rear wheels. In fact, he was on ET Street R's. I beat him. And what's funny is that guy in that car, when he threw the anchor out, he made it to the first turned onto the return road, and went home. I had never seen that before. I saw his taillights after I made the turn. I saw his taillights, like from my point of view, he's kind of veering off. You ever watch the video from Spring Nationals, you'll see where I'm kind of veering off to the left. So he veers off to the left, and I'm pretty far behind him because I just always go to the last turnoff. But we're all running apps. We're not getting time slips. So we just, looking at the app or whatever. So I buzz up and was going to tell the guy, good race. Anyway, I watch his car go down the parking lot and then leave. Like, what the hell did I just, anyway, that car really upset me because I was literally like, okay, it's for about the next, I don't know how many years, going to be eating a whole lot of ramen noodles, but I'm going to get one. Nope. Sovereign saying, hit that like button. I really wanted one too. But if it would have had a regular trans instead of that flappy thing, I probably would have gone for it. And then you start seeing like Palm Beach where they're really trying to turn the wick up on. They launch the car, and it's nothing but clutch dust comes out of the back of it. Just whoosh, this huge cloud of clutch dust. It's kind of scary. Oh, Michael's saying I think he's street racing, not track. I mean, like I say, I've been around both. So, um, oh yeah, Doom's talk. Oh, just given times. Yeah, 10.7, 10.8 with modifications. Yep, stock 10 speeds are getting 11.7. Yeah, and that's, like I say, I mean, we're running with the 1320s as delivered 1140s. So they're all in that same range. They're all really good. Um, oh, Michael's saying that's kind of funny at 24 and a half. Challenger seems to be seems to me Mustang had something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Dooms is talking about Mustang still. It's insane to see NA50s with cams, E85. That's cams, right? E85, yeah, and a tire, an intake manifold run 10s. But they all of them run 10s with cams, E85s, and a tire, and intake manifold work. So it's all of them. It's not just Mustang. I mean, shit. We had, I should say, they're actually in Louisiana, group of guys that are all 392 guys, Scat Pack cores, all of them 1050, 1070. They're fast, just like the Mustangs, just like the Camaros. And the thing with the Camaros is that they just pull everything off the car. They will gut those things. And yeah, they do it with all of them, actually. And they get numbers that are deep into the 10s. And they've been doing it for a while. In fact, one of the first Challengers to run 10s had one of my baby cams in it. J Masters in saying, just got home from Cletus and Cars and now get to watch Professor B. That's what I call a good night. I like it. Oh, Sovereign saying, honestly, don't care if all the other cars are faster than a Challenger. There's always going to be somebody faster. And that's the thing. It's what the people want, really, with the Challenger. Look at how it has taken over sales from Ford and the Mustang. It's the third party that killed the Camaro. So it just sucks. And Doom saying, he's talking to Sovereign saying, I feel you on that. I'm just irritated how Dodge not really caring about the NA guys and that the Hellcat gets all their attention. That's something that I have been annoyed with for the longest amount of time. And in talking to some of the people that I've been able to talk to, the main reason behind a lot of that is the simple fact that they cannot get anything to pass emissions. It's also presumably one of the reasons why the 5.3 is such a turd in the truck. It's why the 6.2 is basically going to have to go away because they can't get it to pass emissions. The laws have changed. The landscape has changed. And believe me, Dodge would love nothing more than to throw a 426 at the NA guys, put a 426 in the trucks. But they're not doing it. Hang on. They're just not doing it. And they're not doing it because they are literally incapable of doing it because of EPA and other laws and rules. Look, the Mustang, look at what happened to the Mustang. The Mustang lost power, right? They didn't change how they're rating the Mustang. Even the Mustang had to make some changes. And again, it's going to come in catalytic converter over temp protection. So the engine didn't change. Just some software did. Rift is hanging out with Doom. Yeah, so Rift ran a 1066. What did I end up running with mine? It was like a 1069 or something like that. Our cars were practically identical on drag radials. See, Sovereign's hanging out with Doom. Doom's hanging out with Sovereign. Let's see. X is in. Saying, what up, Professor B? What up? Oh, Chuck's talking about Scavenger 1320. Yeah, he's doing really good. That car is very well race prepped. Cool guy. I got to meet him. I like that guy. Let's see. Himmy Dad's asking, would the Elephant do emissions matter if you throw in an existing car in a non-inspection state like here in Ohio? Absolutely not. By all means, throw it in there. You don't have anything to worry about there. Although the Elephant, funny thing about you can, if you left the Elephant alone and just put it in the car, it'd be pretty good. But there are some folks that had some problems with Elephant engines. Let's see. Sovereign's still hanging out with Doom. Himmy's saying, 426, but 440 is better. Down low. 426 really starts to scream at higher RPMs. That's why they were so badass in NASCAR. So the funny thing about the 426 is that, I mean, obviously that's the street Hemi, but even the race Hemi, or what you would consider to be the race Hemi, the 12.5 to 1 with the solid roller, that variety of the Hemi was what people think of, like the way that engine ran is what people would think of the way a Hemi is supposed to run. But the walking around street Hemi, like I say, they don't really, they feel like a small block. In fact, they feel like kind of an anemic small block until about 3,800 RPM. They start to remember that they're a big block. And then around 4,200 RPM, they fully realize what in the world that they actually are. And from there to about 6,000 RPM, they're pretty stout. Or basically about the time that the 440 signed off and was punching its clock, that's when the 426 would typically wake up. And that's real apparent. If you look at the port velocity through the cylinder head, so if you're just to take the intake runner and calculate port velocity, the 440, now granted it's a bigger engine, but the 440 at 4,700 RPM had the same port velocity. Now granted, this is 4,700, not even 5,000 RPM. Really not even, 47 ain't 5. 47 is less than, and it's closer to 45 than 5. Had the same port velocity as a 426 Hemi at 6,500 RPM. That will give you an idea of the port size difference between the two. The 440, the big block Mopars have a teeny itty bitty port volume. The port window is very small. They don't flow a lot, but what they do is that they have a ton of velocity and you barely tip into the throttle and it's all the torque right now. And that's pretty cool. And that's what makes them feel so punchy. It's why they would get so far out on a 426 and then the 426 would be reeling the thing in like a 2-pound trout. So very, very, very stereotypical, but I've driven both. And I can tell you that if you're just farting around, goofing off, the 440 is way better. And if you pair a 440 or a 383 or a 400 even with a set of max wedge heads, oh goodness, that's when you forget about the Hemi altogether. Muay Thai saying Mustang is not a muscle car anymore. Yeah, I got to agree with that. I mean, but damn, we had the opportunity with the GT500 again. I mean, God, that's, there's a few cars that have really broken my heart, but there's only two that have real, like of the modern era that really broke my heart. The first was the original LS7 Z28. just because it was $72,000 for a Camaro. And then the GT 500. I mean, damn it. Why could they have not put a real good old-fashioned slush box on that thing? Hemi Dad, thank you very much. And they saying, dude, I love this channel. Where else are you going to get this kind of comparison between 426 and 440? I freaking love it, man. It's so, like I say, I thank you very much. I appreciate that, man. Listen, I've had a cool opportunity to drive these things and to develop my own opinion of it. So you're going to love this. So where a lot of this came from is I knew, let's see, I don't know, five or six guys that had built Polarises, Polaris. See, it was a Polaris, a Charger, a Roadrunner. What was that other damn thing? No, it wasn't a Barracuda. Anyway, the three that I knew were the three that I drove, and one of them was a 440, a really well sorted 440, and two of them were 426 Hemi cars. And these were the Hemi cars that were the re-release cars. And we dynoed them. I got a chance to drive them, and it's just I can tell you. Whether it's the Hemi needs a 4-speed, either that or a ton of converter, which makes it a real pain if you're wanting to drive the thing around on the street. Makes it real doggy even then. I mean, it's just going to want to wrap through the converter. Where the 440, I mean, you put a semi-tight converter on it and a set of 355 gears through a 727 torque flight, and it will do burnouts forever. And it just has such really good instant throttle. Like, how do I explain this? It's like the torque curve is that all the time with a 440. It's like partial throttle, you get all the torque. Wide open throttle, you get the same amount of torque. It's really weird. It's a lot. I'll put it to you like this. It's a lot like my wife's Gen 3, the TBI 305. No matter how much throttle you give it, it's all the torque all the time. It's the exact same way with the 440, just amplified. Let's see. Sorry, I got to catch back up with you guys. Bear with me just a second. Dang it. Here we go. Sorry, I'm saying, Chuck, I'd go with the 442. Chuck saying he'd go with the 440. If it was good enough for Kowalski, it's good enough for anybody. Fun fact, by the way, all of the badass Mopars that you can think of were none of them were Hemi cars. I'll just leave it at that. Chuck saying I've driven both. I agree. The 440 is sweet old school rumble, but modern Gen 3 Hemis are way more efficient. Modern Gen 3 Hemis are really hard to beat. Really, really hard to beat. Chuck's saying the Mustangs pop more than anything else. So here's the problem with the Mustang that I always found to be true. The Mustang will keep making power right up until the point where they pop. So what used to be the case is that they would pop engines, which was bad because early on in the Coyote era, a lot of guys found out the expensive way, what the limits were for that early Coyote block. And so transport yourself now to 2018 with the new 10-speed and everything else. It's really then where the Mustang came into its own, where it was really, really good. And even back then, I put a video together and I had called it at 11.6. that I thought that car was going to run. And I wasn't that far off the mark. But the reality with the Mustang is that the transmission is the weak link, really. And what we would find is that guys were having fits with the Mustang. It would make all the power you wanted to make up to a certain point, mind you. I mean, obviously oil pump gears come into play and everything else, but they would make power. Like, say, for example, you wanted to build a solid street car, not a stripped down E85 deal, but a solid street car boosted running 1070, 1050. That was about as much as you could run through that transmission before you had to start seriously thinking about upgrading it. And that was just the way that it was. I mean, it is the way that it is. It's still that way. At least so far as, what I've talked to guys when I was thinking about building one, the people that I know that have had them and have campaigned them with any real amount of success, it is a reality that at a certain point you will start to find weak links no matter what. And all of these cars stock make a whole lot of power. Mustangs and Challengers making basically 500 horsepower, regardless of how you want to call it. The Camaro making 455, 465 horsepower. No matter how you want to look at it, they're all making close enough to call 500 horsepower. Maybe not the Camaro, but you get the idea. They're making a ton of power, and they're trying to do it as light as they possibly can with the Camaro and the Mustang. The thing is that if any of the 392 power plant packages had an HP 90, they would be bomb proof, but they got an HP 70, which will carry that car even up to about 550, 560 foot-pounds of torque to the rear wheels. It'll at least cover it there. So, but it's a heavy car. And so that's where the load really hurts that transmission the most. Anyway, back to you guys. Robert saying that and a Challenger Charger can punch through a line of Hondas. Indeed. Challenger's kind of like a fullback. Space Dog's asking, hey, does the ProFlex Commander E85 kit really work on a stock 392? It might, but I wouldn't waste my time with it. You're not going to get anything out of that on a 392 because it doesn't adjust timing or does not adjust for timing. So unless they've changed something, you're not really going to benefit at all from the 85 on a 392. And I mean, listen, I had Quick Brick's car on the dyno for 4 days doing power pulls, doing power sweeps, timing sweeps, fueling sweeps. Basically in my spare time, I would hop into that car, fire it up. I would, I'd have a tune revision sitting over here. And what I would do is basically I would say, okay, I'm going to try today a power sweep from 18 degrees of timing to 24 degrees of timing. It's E85, and I don't have enough compression to really utilize it anyway. But so I could literally go from one timing extreme to the next, and the car wouldn't care, or it wouldn't have any pre-ignition because there wasn't enough compression, and the fuel could handle all that cylinder pressure. So try doing that. No real power gain. And you pick up some torque with it, but horsepower, not so much. Try different fuel ratios, fuel air ratios. That didn't work. That didn't matter. So at some point you're done, pulled his car off the dyno, and that was that. That car at 4,600 pounds went in 1120 at 120 miles an hour. That's a 4,600 pound SRT Charger going that quick with my CDO1 grind cam. Oh, Sovereign's at Chuck saying, true, but in the Mustang, a 5.0 versus a 6.4, I'd imagine stock 392 would smoke a stock 5.0 from a dig. It does kind of. Depends on what gear's in the 5.0 though. But on a drag strip, like I say, man, the 392 just gets way out on a Mustang. It'll reel it in for sure. The Mustang will, but it's tough. But they do spin pretty hard. Let me give you the difference between a 5.0 and really any other engine, push rod engine. This is okay. So this is where numbers can lie or mislead. Let me go with that because I think you'll know why here in just a second. Tale of two cars, tale of two trucks. The story is the same. So when I drove the Mustang for the first time, it had a 315 gear in it. And my SRT comes with a 309. So you would think, bully for the Mustang, right? Well, not really, because the 5.0 has so much less torque than the 392. So much less torque. So much less torque. That even with the weight disadvantage that my Challenger had, it felt so much stronger. Now, I know that Mustang would reel in that 392 on the highway, even with a 315 gear. It may not do it as quickly as it would with a 355, but it would absolutely still do it. But here's kind of the catch. The way I describe the Mustang is it's a lot like riding in a commercial jet. You realize that a commercial jet, depending on the density altitude, is going to come off that runway somewhere between 148 miles an hour and 165 miles an hour. A little bit higher in higher altitudes, but you get the idea. You're doing let's call it 155 miles an hour. But you never really feel it in the jet. If I were to put you in a car and accelerate you to 155 miles an hour, you would definitely feel the difference. And I guess it's kind of an odd way to put it, but that's what the Mustang felt like to me. It just kept pulling in whatever gear that it was in. And it would keep pulling and pulling and pulling at a very low G level. In other words, the amount you're getting pushed back was not that much. But it just kept doing it for longer. It was able to move a smaller G load for a longer period of time because you could just rev the thing out. You never got the sense of acceleration, but you were accelerating nonetheless. And hopefully I'm explaining that the right way. I'll tell you another way that I noticed the 5-liter doing this was when I was test driving the trucks. When I drove the 5-liter for the first time, one of the things that I was stricken by was how high the thing would rev. In a truck, that thing will still rev to almost 7,000 RPM. The Ram would only rev to 55 or 56 at the most. But the Ram felt faster. It felt stronger. You had more of a sense of acceleration, at least per gear. Now, it might not have been as fast, stock for stock, but I can tell you this. It sure felt better. And I can tell you that where the 5.0 always had a bit of a deficit was on that initial tip-in torque. It's like, where's the rest of the engine? And the 5-liter truck was no different. Where the Hemi seemed to be a little bit playful, the Ford seemed to be a bit more youthful, but like with youthful angst. It just always seemed to be pissed. And it only seemed to use 2 gears of the 10-speed automatic. So it was just kind of a strange experience. Why do I have a 10-speed if when I go wide open throttle, I'm using 1 gear to go from 60 to 100, it seemed like. So anyway, the every combination will have this phrase associated with it. Its blessing is its curse. The 392's blessing is that it is the absolute most powerful engine in the field. Its curse is that it cannot be modified to make any more power by the manufacturer because it won't pass emissions. The aftermarket doesn't want to have anything to do with it because an intake manifold swap doesn't really yield any big results with it. That is to say that that normal magical 500 horsepower to the rear wheels on a dyno jet comes at the cost of a cam and long tubes and a few other things. But you're limited somewhere. And in this case, the 392 is not limited by cylinder heads. It's kind of limited by intake manifold, but more to the point, it's strapped to a heavy car. But there's a lot of heavy-duty parts associated with it too. The 5.0, its blessing is that it makes a ton of horsepower. But its curse is that it's shackled with not having any discernible torque down low. You've got to gear it the right way to really get the most out of that engine. And should anybody ever choose to gear a 5-liter the way that it should be, you're going to be rewarded with an amazing driving experience. But from the factory, they don't work like that. And of course, the Camaro's blessing is durability, or at least perceived durability with the LT platform. Its curse is that it's GM. So there's that. Chuck saying, I've done already, and I've owned the car for a month for sure. Michael saying 64.5 Mustang. That's the one that got us all started. Chuck's not seeing any reason to mod the Scat. I probably wouldn't. I personally, not for the new models. Yeah, Summer saying it's great the way it is. Saying sick acceleration for sure. And Sovereign saying 6.4 really doesn't need anything. It's big and naturally aspirated. The other thing too is that, I mean, it really is it's as good of an engine, and it does everything extremely well. And again, yeah, if it had 500 less pounds, sure, but it is what it is, and it does great with what it is. The problem is okay, the problem with these things is that you're living in an era. Okay, so you're talking about the 440 cars and you're talking about the Hemi cars. Even on a slick, Stormy's faster than many of the 440 classic era hot rods were. Let's be real, guys, okay? My truck, Stormy, running a 1430, in the heat, in the swamp, by the way. Grains were like 135 or 140. Stormy running those kind of numbers in the heat on stock tires on the street is faster than most of the big block hot rod cars from that era, save for some standouts. Let's be real. All right. So 14s are fast. Now, we're living in an era where all three of the fast cars, and really the Z maybe falls into, well, not really. Supra kind of falls into this in a way too. I don't want to exclude anybody. Or they're all 11-second cars. 11-second cars used to be trailered to the drag strip. So let's put some things into perspective here. You know, to say that one car is faster than the other, they're 11-second cars. They're all fast. You know, faster, it becomes very irrelevant. And I got to tell you, I didn't buy the fastest truck. I bought the one that made me happy. And that's kind of how it works with the cars too. Buy the one that makes you happy. And don't fool yourself into thinking that the numbers are everything. They're not. It's the driving experience. If numbers were everything, I'd build a 5-liter twin turbo, built trans, the whole 9 yards and put together something that is disgustingly fast a few times at least until something breaks. Hang on. One bad KZ saying, why don't you put your drinks in the fridge, man? Dude, I just like them. I like them room temperature. I've always been like that. I don't know why. It's just a weird quirk of mine. Yeah, anything bubbly, I like room temperature. It's just weird. Actually, anything that I drink typically has no ice or very little ice. Good eye, though. Oh, Chuck saying no hate on his 5.7 shaker. It was fun, just not worth dumping 15 grand in mods for sure. And Sovereign saying, exactly, you made a better decision. You have a warranty. It's way better car. I think you're going to love it forever. And Chuck saying, yeah, dealer just sucks about them gouging on the Hellcats. I'll tell you what, around here, down here, I can get Hellcats at sticker. That's really not the problem. Where I had a problem, okay, that's a Hellcat. That's not, an everyday vehicle. That's a Hellcat that I can get at sticker. The problem is that I had, like, for example, with Ford. Ford would not budge on the F-150. It was sticker plus $3 grand. It was what they tried to charge me for the STX 4x4 that I was looking at. So that's the scarier part. That's an everyday vehicle. That's a vehicle that somebody relies on, and they're cracking them for a significant chunk of change over the sticker. That was reason enough for me to walk, but I had to at least try to play the game a little bit. No, Sovereign, don't sell yourself short, brother. You get one if you want one. Oh, Chuck, you didn't compromise, bro. Trust me. Like I was telling you, you got a car that you can actually use. And that's something else, too. Let's talk about modifications for a minute. Let's talk about stock cars for a second. You cannot use the power that a Hellcat makes on the street realistically. Like you can't, you ain't just running around laying 700 horsepower to the tires, or at least through the transmission. You're not running around that wide open all the time with a Hellcat. What people fail to remember is that the Hellcat, ZL1, Z06, start picking all the cars that you think of right now that are fast. All of those cars are so fast that you can't do anything with them until you are already rolling. They're fast, but they're fast in a weird way. They're fast in that they go from 60 to 130 miles an hour faster than most cars can go 0 to 60. It's weird how fast these modern cars are. And it's weird that you don't feel the speed. It just blows my mind sometimes, especially when I was doing a lot of the data logging on Revlon. I would regularly spool that thing up to 140, sometimes 150 miles an hour to collect data. And the car's is stable. In fact, when I do that, one thing, fun fact, by the way, where I make those hits, I'm actually in a sweeping curve. So it's not like I'm turning like that, but I'm like this, wide open. Actually, it starts out like this. It drifts left, and then it goes right over a bridge. So I'm clearing the bridge at 140 to 150 after I've literally turned twice at wide open throttle at 130 to 150 miles an hour. Velocito's built weird. That's why people say, the Challengers don't handle well. And I'm like, you don't know what I do you? I do things with my car that would disagree with that statement. Handily. Oh, and that's on my my drag pack as well. So, but yeah, a lot of people don't know that, and I don't really, not that I'm taking it for granted. It's just that it's just part of what I do. So it's not like I've got this beautiful straight stretch of road. I mean, I've got a piece of road that's very dead and very safe for me to do this on. It's just I have to make a certain amount of changes as I'm making that hit. Let's see. Oh, Sovereign's even saying, yeah, Chuck, you do get more bang for your buck with the 6.4 for sure. Carzilla saying, I'm thinking of ordering a Scat. Would you get a new one or buy a used Hellcat? Looking to spend around 50 large. Man, it depends on what you're going to be doing with the car, Carzilla. I mean, if you're out playing around with it on the street, it's really hard to beat a 392, man. Again, you can use every horsepower that you bought with a 392. So with a Hellcat, not so much. And the 392 is a lot more responsive. It's just not as absolutely fast as a Hellcat, but it is still a really good car. It's one of those things where you got to drive them both and see what you like more. But just like Sovereign saying, talking to Chuck, I mean, you can use all the power that you bought. You put a set of drag radials on the back of that thing, and it's a great car. And that's why so many of them sell. Oh, Sovereign saying Mustang's a sports car, not a muscle car. Indeed. I just scrolled down to the bottom. Chuck saying 20 plus grand, 20 grand over sticker on a Hellcat. Oh, hell no. Sovereign saying, I see a lot of 392s. Yeah, there's a reason for that. I'm going to try to snag a few more of you guys, and then I have got to sign out. Amy Dad saying, question, does dropping the clutch at, say, 3,000 RPM delay a patch up Mulberry Street and my cat hurt that big beefy transmission in the long run? Ooh, not on stock tires, dude. Not on stock tires at all. In fact, I recommend hammering it, drop it in second, about 3,800 RPM, and just go, ear, and that's all you need. Practice that a few times first. One Bad KZ saying, I like this, saying it's funny, a local car show, an International Scout with a 392 badge from a new Dodge on the fender had the old International 392. Yeah. I know they had 345s. Chuck saying, I'm kind of going bottom up because I gotta check out here pretty quick. But saying, I'm telling you guys, I don't care what the comparisons are with the old to the modern. That Super B I drove possessed me. That hard steering, no radio, no AC, loud noise, and I was in heaven. I tell you what, y'all know I'm a huge B-body fan. Actually, B-body and C-body, I've always been a big car fan. I just weird like that. I don't like Mustangs were always neat. I like them, but it wasn't ever anything I could ever really fall in love with. I always liked the bigger body cars. And yeah, I can see why that Super B would have been a good ride. Let's see. God, it has been raining out here for like a week. So we're in the middle of monsoon season, just kind of Chuck saying, well, happy Labor Day, everybody. Got to go. See you, Chuck. Have a good one, buddy. So everything, it's been raining here. It's been raining since, I don't know, forever. It feels like. What is it? Like it's the 3rd of September. Okay. So it's been raining for probably the last month, and it's got everybody, like, allergies are going nuts. So if I'm sniffing it or whatever, that's why. But more to the point, nothing will dry out. We keep getting these like storms come through here, and they're these little, like, they're storm quality storms, like they're legit storms, but they're fun sized. So this little fun sized storm will come over and just blast everything with water, right? And then it goes away. Well, everything stays wet. And then since it's been doing this for a month, everything smells like a freaking hot dog fart. And it's just, oh my God, this is driving me nuts. So anyway, getting back to it, I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. So tomorrow, if the weather works with us, 180 thermostat goes in the truck. Stormy gets a little bit cooler attitude, because I got to tell you, 206 degrees and 222 degree oil temp when you're running 20 weight oil doesn't necessarily give me the right vibe. So she's going to get a 180 anyway. It's going to be better for her all the way around. Load the tune up for that. And give you guys a report, see how she runs. But with that, guys, I am going to wrap it up. Just saw a Big Chillin' checking in saying, I can't believe this walking away from gas-powered muscle, or maybe they're coming with a new platform like a CUDA. I don't know what they're going to call this latest iteration of whatever Mopar is coming out with. I guess we got to wait till SEMA for that, right? Anyway, we'll see what ends up shaking. Hopefully it's something cool, but I don't know if there's a whole lot cool left in that well, if you know what I mean. So, guys, with that, I do have to wrap it up. You know, sit and don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. Guys, get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. Guys, love each and every one of y'all. Would not do this without you. And with that, that is a wrap. We'll catch you on the next one. Give you guys some updates, and I will post that video that I did with the truck with traction control and everything else on. You can see it blink in the traction control. It's pretty funny. So anyway, with that, now it's a wrap. It is.